Welcome to Candid Conversations. My name is Edward Woods III, Executive Director of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Joining me this morning is our none other than Commissioner Dustin Wishes, our chairperson, Commissioner Douglas Clark, our vice chairperson, Commissioner Steve Lett, our legal liaison, and Commissioner Rebecca Szetela. Welcome, commissioners, to the broadcast.
Welcome, Edward. Or thank you
Well,
for having us.
Well, today we're going to talk about the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan, so that our public can know more about it. It's also available. On our website under meeting materials in December. In our December meeting, you can take a look at the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan. The architect of the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan started with Commissioner Clark. And then it also worked with Commissioner Lett on a project with that, and it was also edited by Commissioner Szetela. Obviously, our chairperson is here, and so without further ado, we're going to ask Commissioner Clark to talk about the reason behind the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan.
Well, the reason that we put a plan together, was the Constitution keeps us active as a commission as long as we have a lawsuit. But after the lawsuits are completed, we felt that as a commission that the commission needs to go into dormancy, which is going to be defined as the commission will turn in all of its equipment. That's the first thing. The outstanding administrative types of duties, we'll have 30 days for our staff to migrate those over to the Department of State. And then at that point, our salaries will stop, and hopefully we will not have to be reactivated because of an additional lawsuit. If we do have to be reactivated, the deactivation plan is really a deactivation and reactivation plan. And that plan would reactivate the commission at that point in time. And our equipment would be returned to us by the Department of State. And our salaries would be reinstated at that point in time. One additional thing I would like to point out is that the Michigan Department of State was part of the review. We got their technical people involved to make sure that our equipment would be handled, our equipment and our data would be handled appropriately. And they have a process within the Department of State or in the state of Michigan on how they archive it and how they can reconstruct the hardware and put the data back onto the machines and return it to us.
Can't hear you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Clark. Let me actually share my screen so people can actually see the dormancy plan, and that's available on the website. They can actually see the dormancy plan that is available on our website, and it talks about the appointments and term. It talks about dormant status. It talks about reactivation and expiration of term. I know, Commissioner Clark, that you were the one that initiated this, but Commissioner Lett, you put it in its current format so we could go into our rules and procedures. So can you talk a little bit, give an overview of the appointment and the term, the dormant status, as well as the reactivation, please?
Well, the dormant status, as Commissioner Clark said, would activate or be activated if dormancy is an active word, when all of the lawsuits are completed. Right now, there is one remaining, which is currently getting a little more active, and we would anticipate that it will go on for some time. It would not be unusual to go on for a year or longer. So the Constitution doesn't deal with keeping us in any type of status other than you're either full-time or you're not anything. And that did not seem like a very good idea to us, because if the lawsuits are settled and in the favor of the commission, by that I mean the plans and the maps are appropriate, then there's nothing for us to do. However, if a court were to determine that the plans needed further work, then we would, of course, go back in and do whatever was necessary to correct whatever deficiencies there may be. So far, there hasn't been any rulings that they are deficient. We anticipate that will continue. So the second step in considering dormancy and reactivation was, well, what happens if after, let's pick the 24 elections, somebody doesn't like the outcome, which is probably a foregone conclusion, and somebody files a suit and said, we need to go back because here's what the outcome was, and we told you so, and so courts, you need to tell them to do something different. Well, at that point in time, and that could be 2, 3, 4 years, however long between now and 2030, would be then a lawsuit against the commission. Well, if the commission goes totally out of existence, there is no commission then to sue, and what are you going to do? So the determination was made by the commission that we would simply go dormant, and if a lawsuit is filed, then we could reactivate and defend the lawsuit. There's a couple of reasons for that. If you determine that there is no commission and you can't bring us back somehow, then you're going to have to appoint a new commission. And there doesn't seem to be a logical reason to do that prior to the 2030 census and redistricting at that point in time, for the simple reason that new people would not know what we had necessarily done, would not be up to speed on the mapping programs, which are pretty complicated, and would be starting from scratch. Whereas if you brought back, reactivated this commission, we would say we would hit the ground running. So that was the thought process behind a dormancy and reactivation process. And certainly at the time the lawsuits that are currently one lawsuit that's currently pending is resolved, then we would go into dormancy, and as Commissioner Clark said, return all the equipment, which would be held by the Secretary of State in however secure position they would hold it, so we could have it back if we needed it. And we would, of course, turn in all of our records, which we've turned in a lot of them already, but the ones that we continue to accumulate now would be turned in, and we would simply go our own way. The executive director, which is our only employee right now, would then have to wrap up the business of the commission, taxes, etc., getting those things around and done, audits, accountings, whatever, and then they would be done, and it would be all done. And reactivating, if there's a lawsuit, it could be served on the individual commissioners, as it has been in the past. It could be served on the Secretary of State, as she is the secretary of the commission. And we would then notify everybody and get back at it. So that's the reasoning and the method of what we were going to try to do. Obviously, once we go dormant, as has been said several times, there would be no more recompense to the commissioners. I think that pretty well sums it up.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Szetela, can you answer this question for Neil Leto? What happens if any commissioners are unavailable, for example, death, moved out of state upon reactivation?
So the Constitution specifies what happens in the event a commissioner can no longer serve on the commission, and that would require the Secretary of State to go back to that original pool of individuals who had submitted their names and fill out the application to be selected as a commissioner, and the Secretary of State would follow their processes to pick a new commissioner.
Commissioner Szetela, why are you so familiar with that process?
I think all of us are somewhat mini experts in the constitutional amendment at this point because we've had to go back to it over and over again and reference it. And, I think we were all very familiar with it at this point.
But I believe you in particular, you were the third person as it relates to that. You came on in November because someone did resigned or didn't want to continue with the commission. Is that correct?
Yes. There were actually two individuals who were picked for my independent slot. The first one came on and subsequently resigned, and then the second person came on and subsequently resigned, and I was actually the third pick.
There we go. Commissioner Witches, is there a belief amongst the commission that they should be paid in perpetuity, even though there are no lawsuits?
We would not be paid if there's no lawsuits. If the Constitution clearly states that if we were to be working and if there are no lawsuits, we would draw a salary. But if everything goes dormant, we are no longer in active status, and thus no pay for us at all at that particular point.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of stories out there and people thinking about the commissions getting paid for doing nothing and different things along those lines. As commissioners, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think at this point, that's a misunderstanding that we're doing nothing. We are in active litigation. We are meeting once a month at least to handle just general business of the commission. So we are still actively engaged at this point. I think the purpose of this dormancy plan was to create a method for the commission to not be paid once we are no longer in active litigation and once our business is wrapped up, because the commission recognized that we should not be paid if we're not actually doing any work.
Who forced you to put the dormancy and reactivation plan together?
No one.
It was
The commission decided to do it on our own.
Yeah, it was our own initiative.
So it was not politically motivated or drawn or anything like that. The commission, in its own wisdom, decided to do it. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
That's correct.
Well, as I said, we as a commission, we took a look at what's going to happen with the lawsuits. What's going to happen, and certainly what's going to happen down the road if a lawsuit is instituted after all the other lawsuits have been resolved. And that's not an unheard of situation. In fact, it happened prior to 2020 when the amendments were floating around, that lawsuits were filed regarding the commission and the amendment. So it's not something that is beyond possibility. We felt that depending on the outcomes that we see coming down the road, that it was probably a probability rather than a possibility. Hopefully not, but we wanted to be prepared for it. Clearly, the Constitution doesn't provide for that. So we felt that part of our job would be to flesh out in a reasonable manner a program to solve what we perceive to be problems without actually costing anybody any money.
So the commission, as made clear through the audit, still remains financial stewards of taxpayer funds. We do have a question here from Anthony, one of the ones who we can count on week in and week every time we meet for public comment. And he says, what law firm would we hire in the event of lawsuits? And we already do have a law firm. So Commissioner Lett, as our legal liaison, can you share that with him?
Well, we've already spoken with both of our law firms, the ones that Baker Hostetler, who is defending the lawsuits, and the Fink Bressett law firm, who is our local counsel. And we have an agreement with them that they will continue to represent us in the event of a future lawsuit. and that there will not be any money paid if we're dormant and nothing's going on. So we're not paying them a retainer just on standby. But if something became active, we would recontact them and, of course, come to a new agreement on whatever the contractual arrangements need to be made. So the same firms, assuming they're still in business, no reason to believe they wouldn't be, would be brought back on board, as well as the same mapping service, EDS, most likely the same VRA attorney, and I think that about covers it.
All right. Are there any questions or comments? As you know, Candid Conversations is a real brief, not an extensive program where commissioners share information or action that has been taken, and then welcomes the general public to ask questions or to get better understanding and clarity with regards to the topic in hand. In this case, the topic at hand is the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan that was recently approved, actually yesterday, by the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Are there any other comments or questions left from the listening audience? All right. Well, thanks for being a part of Candid Conversations. We greatly appreciate you being here. I would like to thank the bosses of my bosses, 4 out of 13 that are represented here today with Candid Conversations: Commissioner Witches, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Szetela, and Commissioner Lett for being with us this morning. At 11:30, we will have a press avail. We will have a press avail with members of the media that will be live on our YouTube channel, and you will be able to hear questions from the press. Our topic, once again, will be the Dormancy and Reactivation Plan, trying to make sure that we tell the truth and dispel the myths. So once again, that will take place at 11:30 a.m. on the MICRC YouTube channel. This is Edward Woods III with the Executive Director for the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission with Candid Conversations. We look forward to seeing you again shortly, and have a great weekend.